Hey guys, back again with another Marvel Legends review, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Red Hulk Wave Black Costume Spider-Man. So right off the bat, for me, you guys already know this is a must-have for my collection. I haven't seen this anywhere on eBay or Kijiji, Craigslist, or whatever you use for a decent price until recently. Everyone was asking for like $70 for this thing, and I'm just like, nah, man, like I'm not paying $70, even though I love the figure. I'm not paying $70. But yeah, look at this thing; it's badass. I mean, like, I'm a big Venom fan too, but I'm happy with all the Venom figures I have. This thing just knocks it out of the park. And the reason I say that is because I've had this variation of the Black Costume Spider-Man for years, and there's nothing wrong with this. The only thing that I didn't like was, other than the head falling off because I had dropped him a whole bunch of times. I've had this figure since I was like, I don't know, 11. I never understood why they had to paint everything silver, and the eyes were just so like lifeless, right? Not that it's supposed to look like it's alive, but there's no character in them. Same thing for the web shooters on the top of the hand. They're silver. What's with that? It almost makes you think, was this figure shipped here in a shipping crate from like Hong Kong and meant to be a knockoff like all those Deadpools you see on eBay, or not? Anyways, the one thing I will say about this figure, I know this isn't a review for him, but he does have a crap ton of articulation, unlike the rest of the Spider-Man Origins line. So if you can, and you don't have this guy, pick this guy up. He's worth it. Anyways, getting back to him. He is pretty cool. Right off the bat, I will say, look at the eyes. There's so much more character, and what makes it that there's more character is that the angle of like all the curvatures here, it changes in angle. It's not uniform. It doesn't look like someone just stamped it on. It looks like it's sculpted. It is what it is. This guy just has so much more like mystery involved in his costume. And I love the fact that he has like midnight blue shaded in with a black. That's just so cool to me. I don't know why. Having said all that, he does not have as much articulation as the variation of the black costume I just showed. But let's get into this guy's details a bit more. Alright, so taking another look at these two side by side, another thing is, I like that this one looks more streamlined in the waist area and with the legs, versus this one, it looks a lot more blocky and kind of like this is supposed to be the front of a race car or something like that. Anyways, this guy represents, the comic variation quite well because, as you know, the black suit gave him extra strength and whatnot because it was an actual living organism. So I think it's really represented well in the sculpt here because he is quite, he's a lot more bulkier in select areas, not just all over looking blocky. Anyways, he stands roughly 6 inches tall. The only drawbacks now, well, I guess we're getting into the articulation. The only drawbacks of this figure are the articulation. But as a big Spider-Man fan and someone who wants to, have a representation of the Spider-Verse, as they call it, in their Spider-Man display, I'm quite content with this figure. Reason being is, aside from all the details, the lack of articulation doesn't totally take away from the figure's greatness. Right off the bat, I will say, the lack of articulation is pretty much here. There's no ankle swivel, so you can't really get him in a dynamic pose to have him like that, kind of crouch, you know what I mean, with a lunging, kind of curved ankle. And as well, he has an ab crunch joint that suffices for most characters, but with him, if you want to have him kind of like posed and like grabbing the floor, not grabbing the floor, but you know what I mean, that classic Spider-Man pose, he's going to have a little bit of a harder time with that because he doesn't have the ankle pivot and his ab crunch joint doesn't allow him to bend as much, which is why you kind of have to adopt like an Iron Man-esque pose where you kind of like rotate the waist, put the hand down here. And lastly, the neck, I would have liked if they could have swiveled it a bit more, with the head being straight instead of him being what? Like that. So guys, I definitely recommend you pick this figure up however you can. Just don't overpay for it because it does lack some articulation, and I'm pretty sure Marvel or Hasbro will redo this figure at some point in a 6-inch scale. But I definitely recommend picking this guy up if you're a Spider-Man fan and if you're looking to have a representation of the black costume Spider-Man in your display, rather than settling for like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3 figure, which we'll never speak of again because that movie was an abomination. So just to give you guys a brief idea of how cool this figure is and how much it accentuates your Spider-Man display, this is my representation of the quote-unquote Spider-Verse and all the different Spider-Man. You can see that, this one here does actually make much more of an impression than this one here. So that was my take on the Red Hulk Wave 2008, I believe, Black Spider-Man. And yeah, I hope to see you guys on my next reviews. But until then...